Hi guys, Spanners here. Welcome to Missed Apex, where we're continuing our great and not so great expectations, where we explore what the F1 team's boardrooms will be passing down to their team principals as their expectations for the year. We're also going to include the FIA in this great expectations chat, and also F1, so Liberty Media too. And also, we've had 2 car launches drop in our laps. Now, I'm going to start with the launch season stuff because I have to say, in my mind, I wasn't thinking about launch dates or testing days or when we were going to see liveries, because I was told that there was going to be this mega one-size-fits-all FIA magic launch at the O2 Arena in London. So I was really surprised to suddenly see 2 cars on track. That's probably my fault for not keeping up, but there were some really interesting things to come out of both those car launches. So joining me is Matt Trumpets. Hello, Matt.
I am still trying to get over my surprise at seeing a real car before the day before testing. We didn't expect to see real cars until after the O2 event.
Yeah, so I didn't imagine that. They did make it out as if they were going to do all the car launches at this O2 event. And then, okay, obviously we know that probably isn't the real car. That's more of a livery launch. But the cars they put out on the track, I mean, that is the 2025 car to some extent. And we're joined by someone who likes riding and driving pretend race cars. It's Scott Stuffey Tuffy. Hello, Scott.
Hey, Spanners. It's been a while since I've been back on. I've been busy changing lots of dirty nappies with a newborn.
And yes, you have my commiserations on that, especially after hearing the sad news that your sim rig might change. You have to change to a different side of the room, so we're going to see the right-hand side of Scott's face, which no one is ready for.
Yeah, it's the ugly side. There's a reason why you've seen the left side for the last 5 years. But yes, no, I'm thoroughly looking forward to F1 season. We're fully in the swing now, as you said, 2 launches. And do you know what? It's quite a pleasant surprise to see 2 cars actually out on track. I've been so used to these boring livery reveals that end up having no colour and no paint involved. And we saw in my personal opinion, and I know it was an acquired taste for many, quite a nice camouflaged McLaren. And we saw a similar type camouflaged Williams as well. Not too bad liveries, in my personal opinion.
I've got a theory on both of these, because these are 2 teams that have not run a camo livery before, I don't think. So Red Bull have done it a couple of times. They had this absolutely gorgeous urban camo blue, dark blue squares, and it's basically it's DPM, it's displacement pattern material. They also had this zebra one as well, so like a zebra pattern, and it's just meant to break up the shapes. And I think evolutionarily, that might be why zebras have those stripes as well. So you can't make out an individual zebra if you're a lion trying to catch a zebra. But the whole idea is then you can't make a judgment on the aerodynamics, and it disguises it a little bit. Now those 2 testing liveries from Red Bull were gorgeous, and you kind of go, oh man, surely they could have been brave and like have a one-off race where they run the testing liveries. I'm sure their sponsors would absolutely love that. We've not seen McLaren and Williams do it before. The only reason I can think is not because they're trying to hide some great aero innovation. The run that I saw Williams doing earlier, those aren't out-and-out performance runs. It was very much a shakedown run to the extent that they were running wet tyres on a dry track. I think the reason they're running these camouflage liveries is because they can't run the official 2025 livery until this O2 event.
Yep, I think you pretty much nailed it. And I will admit to being sad that Red Bull never ran that Dazzle camouflage livery in an actual race, because it was just, go look it up online if you've not seen it.
But the launch itself, Scott, oh no, go on, have you got something on the liveries?
Just another thing to add. I do think it's totally to do, of course, with the event itself. But I think it's also an opportunity for these teams to launch a merch line. You know how merch is so important now to the bottom line, of course, these F1 teams and income. And it's an excuse for them to, here's the testing camo T-shirt that you can get. And I mean, look at the race suits that they posted for Lando
the
and
Norris,
Oscar.
yes.
They were nice, but that's blatantly going to be a hoodie or a t-shirt that you can buy by the end of next week.
Yeah, but also they said that's the only time they're running those coveralls. So all that work to do the design to make them, but then we can't have tire blankets. You know, tire blankets are under the cosh all the time, but no, we'll have like one-off liveries for testing. I know what they were going for, this kind of stealth. It was very kind of almost Call of Duty inspired. All looked very cool, but then you go, oh, it's a shame. We're never going to see those again. But the launches themselves, though, were interesting because it was quite an honest, hey, actually, this is part of the team procedure. And I know when Scott was going through his, dark, dreary livery, terrible presentation, we were all thinking Alpine. We were all thinking of that launch last year, which just killed me. And they go, right, we're really excited to talk about the F1 team. First, here's half an hour about the endurance team. No offense, endurance team, but we weren't tuning in for that. That wasn't the great Alpine reveal that we were looking for. But these two launches were like an honest part of what the teams were trying to do. So for Williams today, and we are recording this on Friday the 14th, happy Valentine's Day. You can all tell the state of our marriages that we're all doing this instead of anything soundly romantic. But they were doing a do the bits fall off test. Now it's actually like a pretty, I don't know if I want to say brave, but there's a lot of opportunity for things to go wrong if you're going, right, we're going to do our shakedown. The whole point of the shakedown is do any bits fall off? And they televised that, and you go, okay, well, no bits did fall off, but also they're not probably pushing anything to any extreme. So the chances of things going wrong are relatively small, but the risk of the result of things going wrong is you look pretty daft. But it all went slick. It all went well. It looked like a well-oiled operation, and it had a strange broadcast around it, Scott. I know we were discussing it as it was happening. It was like, try not to be grumpy about this, because essentially they're showing us real team activity with some familiar names from the Sky team over the top of it. And you had the fantastic, is it Simon Jones from the Channel 4 broadcast? It was Simon Jones. Yes, it is Simon Jones.
Is it Geffen Jones?
No, I think you've overly Welshified.
No, I mixed the two up. I think they're both Welsh.
Listen, just because he speaks in a Welsh accent doesn't mean he's got a name like Gwethen, right? No, but he's funny. He's such a funny bloke. They had this set piece thing with James Vowles where they were like, let's explore how brainy James Vowles is with these quiz questions. And it would have been way too high risk to ask him things that they didn't know that he was into. So they asked him some specific physics questions, history questions about the automotive industry, and surprise, surprise, he got them all. And then it was overlaid with, I think, some presenters who, I think in their ear, they were being told, hype this up, make this as exciting as possible. And you go, no, it's okay, guys. It doesn't need to be exciting. Testing doesn't need to be exciting. FP1 doesn't need to be exciting. But I do feel like, the modern broadcasts, they have this pressure in their ear. Like, there's got to be top bants. It's got to be brilliant. But sometimes you can just sit on a bit of commentary. Sometimes the event itself is the main feature on the broadcast. So when they actually got into the car and you had Carlos Sainz there, really you wanted to be listening to the engine. You wanted to be listening to the car noises and the engineers talking to each other. Unfortunately, I think the team were under pressure. Keep talking about it. Keep talking about it. But I don't know if I'm being too olden daisy here. But one of the best pieces of commentary I've ever heard in football, and I can't remember who did it, but it's leading up to a goal. But the moment the striker took the shot, the commentator shut up and let the crowd noise take over. She was like, Parker to Turnipson, Derrickson on his left foot, shoots, and then shuts up and lets the crowd celebrations and the player celebrations before coming in at the perfect point when the celebrations have just ebbed and flowed. And I think nowadays, sorry, Scott, I've gone off on a massive rant here. I just feel like modern broadcasts now, they can't just let the event be the main character.
I totally agree, because when Carlos Sainz went out for that installation lap, it was really intriguing, actually, how clear the radio messages were between the engineer and Carlos Sainz. I was like,
hang on a minute.
This is never as clear. It's like me or you talking into a mic right now. And I was so interested.
Well, maybe me more than you, but yeah.
I was just interested to hear the engineer talk to Carlos Sainz and just a little bit of back and forth that they had on that very short installation lap. But throughout the duration of that, the broadcasters were just talking over it, and I just thought, oh, just let them talk with respect. We're not here to listen to you. We're here to listen to Carlos Sainz, the new car, and the engineer and the feedback that they've got from that installation lap or any laps beyond that. But you haven't touched on the weirdest part of this launch by Williams. I appreciate them trying to do something a little bit different. I appreciate both McLaren and Williams giving us 2 launches and giving us the access for them actually doing some laps out on track.
Yeah, like, we shouldn't slate them too much, Scott, otherwise they won't do it again.
We actually got some trackside footage from Brad's Philpott. One of his students was actually there, and he filmed Lando Norris doing a couple of installation laps at Silverstone. And I was surprised actually how many people knew about that happening kind of beforehand and having access to that, which is great. This is much more better than these boring livery reveals that we've had before. And I guess the 75 event next week, as we're recording this, is kind of taking that away and actually making liveries a bit more of making the teams actually have to do their shakedowns as a proper event. But the weirdest thing, going back to it for Williams, was how they ended it with, because of course it's Valentine's Day, they drew a random person's name out of the hat who had won a chance to attend the shakedown, a fan. They brought him up on stage, and then Jenson Button brought out the biggest teddy bear I've ever seen, a bunch of roses, and read him like a love letter to him. And then he just went off stage again. And I was like, okay, I get you're trying to make this a bit, but quite bizarre.
It's fine. I had tuned out by then because actually Jenson Button, I think, was the one who had judged it perfectly and had sort of realised that you shouldn't be too intrusive, because they were encouraging him. Oh, he's still in the car. Just shove your microphone. And by the way, I've done pitside reporting. Never works. Just shoving your microphone into the driver's helmet. And so he was like, no, I'll just wait. I'll get him settled in. And then almost like apologise, like, really sorry, Carlos, I've got to ask you questions. Like, how did the shakedown run go? To which the answer was, mate, it's a shakedown run. Like, they were all trying.
Nothing fell off, and the engine
exactly.
didn't stop.
Yeah.
That's your answer.
Yeah, and I think actually, Button was really good on that. I'm glad I tuned out before the giant teddy bear. I think that would have taken the shine off it for me. So, yeah, what's left for this 75-year event then at the O2 Arena? I think this is going to be Alpine last year times 10. So that's my fear, with maybe some, I don't know if they've got Eminem playing there, I don't know, in between. Do you reckon that's what they'll have? Like, it's like Top of the Pops. They have like an artist in between each car launch. It's
going to be an event. It was always going to be one of their concept cars, you know, the models that they have. And it was just going to be that, probably the technology they got now today with LEDs and so forth, and holograms, maybe even a hologram of just showcasing this is what each individual car is going to look like. And it's just really for the fans to I guess, see their drivers, especially all the new driver partnerships together, and see kind of those dynamics. And yeah, that's about it.
Could you have, I don't know, could you have like holograms of Hunt and Senna? They're introducing the cars, maybe. Have you been to the ABBA show that they do in London? No, but I heard that they have young ABBA on stage as holograms, and then at the end they bring out old ABBA as like a comparison. Oh. Yeah, so old ABBA, and they don't sing or anything. They're just like, "Hello, we're here." By the way, and you go, "Oh, that's strange." Anyway, it's just what I heard. So, I think it's positive. I loved seeing those things from those teams. It's just weird that we now also have this thing next week, which we shouldn't poo-poo in advance.
Can I just say what the best thing is about these launches? It's just all the squiggly lines that you end up seeing online all of a sudden. It's great to see how so many experts appear once there's a shakedown. I'm assuming you saw my tweet. It's quite humorous. A tweet, I saw several, which just makes me laugh, because there's no doubt things that they've probably put on the car to throw other teams off and so forth. No doubt the chassis and the engine is probably what they're going to use for the year.
You've got people on Twitter going, "Oh, I can't believe this concept. It's like the bravest concept ever. Oh, it's so intricate how they..." And like you say, it's probably nothing to do with what they're going to be launching in Australia. All those people online who are doing all those squiggly lines and analysis, it's 100% BS. The tech journalists themselves will tell you that they're reading the tea leaves. And they will, like, if you listen to Scarbs or read Summers, which you blinking should, right? They're giving you tech analysis in a very measured way because they know the limits of the information they have. When you see, like, oh, Mr. Tech Expert XXX sitting there with the squiggly lines talking about, attachment of airflows and, this is going to really attach the airflow, red flag.
What's really interesting about both of these cars from a technical point of view isn't the aero, because as you rightly point out, wings can easily be changed, side pods can easily be changed, floors less so, but we didn't see any floors. Floor edges can easily be changed. What can't really be changed is suspension and suspension mounting points. So you're right, the chassis, the airbox, the wishbones, those will probably all be where they are. And the thing that's fascinating in both the McLaren and the Williams is we've seen a significant revision of where those are. And especially with the McLaren, it's been a major overhaul of last year's package based on those points, nothing to do with the aero.
Okay, well, that brings us to our first great expectations. Now, I was surprised when we were doing last week's show of the boardroom expectations that we didn't actually do McLaren, because they came up in conversation a lot. We searched the transcript and there was something like 85 mentions of McLaren. So they kept coming up, but we didn't specifically ask the question, what constitutes success for McLaren? And you've got Lando Norris, who is saying, oh, okay, well, last year, I wanted to see if I could win the odd race, really. And it's, Lando, you were actually in a title fight. But the way the quotes were coming out, you wouldn't think he was in a title fight. You would think like, I got a chance. I made some mistakes, got the chance to get some wins, and I was happy to get those under my belt. But now I'm strong, and now I'm going to be world champion. And Piastri is also saying, I can be world champion this year. Like, those two are 100% going to mess with each other's title shots next season. That is a disaster in the making. They did not make a good fist of managing that driver relationship, and I don't have any confidence it's going to be better this year. So what's success, Scott? What's success for McLaren?
Winning both championships. Because while we are heading into this season with a lot of expectation of it being very close, a multi-team and multi-driver championship for both of them, McLaren were the big consistent last year. They weren't the quickest at every single race, but they were consistently quick at every single race. It was either them or another one of the three teams fighting for the race wins every weekend. And that's where now they've won the Constructors' Championship. They've got over that hurdle of not winning it for over 2 decades. Now they need to have the belief in themselves. We can win multiple races. We need to back both of our drivers because it is a level playing field for them now. Although I personally still believe Norris will beat Piastri. I think that's what they need to be aiming for. They can't have this like they did last year where they didn't ever believe they could win the Drivers' Championship.
Okay, so small one from me is I think Scott's might be contradicting himself, because if you say they're going for both constructors or drivers, I think they are going to fail to prioritize one over the other. I think the way you win both of those is by having Verstappen and a 90% Verstappen. Having two equal young guns going at each other is it's a recipe for, hey, Ferrari, come and sneak through and win a Raikkonen 2007 style championship.
To start off with, this is where I think what will happen is that I do think at maybe the half point stage in the season, Lando will just pull away from Piastri. This is what I think. I think it's kind of like what Mercedes used to do. Of course, Mercedes had the buffer of always kind of being the fastest team, but they would let Lewis and Bottas and Rosberg fight it out for kind of the first stages of the season. Well, Bottas in particular, not so much Rosberg, but Bottas at the first stage of the season. And then once Lewis pulled enough of a gap, it was like, okay, right, Lewis is in the lead now. We need to prioritize him. And I think that's definitely what McLaren need to do. And I think that's what will happen. If they don't, then yes, they're just going to completely trip over themselves like they did last year.
Well, I'm going to start by disagreeing with you. I think for McLaren, they need to win one of the championships. I think it needs to be either the drivers or the constructors again, because I think we all saw the end of the season and it feels like they kind of, relative to Ferrari, they fluked it a bit. If the FIA hadn't dithered on the flexi wing choice, I think Ferrari wins the constructors last year and Max wins the drivers' championship. I think they need to go and convincingly win at least one championship. And if I'm McLaren, the big difference here has to be my early season performance. Because you say they were in the fight. They were in the fight after the first 6 races. And I think that was kind of tactical on their part.
That's a good point, yeah.
But this season, they're going to have to come out firing on all cylinders. And they're going to need Piastri. And this is where the conflict is. Spanners absolutely pointed out. If you want to win the constructors, you need to maximize your points, which means that as close as it was last season, and yes, I know it wasn't 25%. Thank you for reminding me, entire audience.
We got quite a lot of comments. So you said that Piastri only scored 25% of the points.
Yeah.
You meant he was outscored by 25%.
No, he wasn't even outscored by 25%.
So
the first season was
then?
closer to 25%. I think I was just thinking of a different number. I hadn't actually looked that one up. I looked up the Stroll one because that was part of my Aston presentation that I wanted to make. But it was like 50, 56, 57, 43, 44, something like that. It was respectable, but it was third out of the 4 top finishers. The points gap between them. I think Mercedes was the closest and Ferrari was a little bit closer. Then you get McLaren. And then, of course, I won't bring up Perez and Red Bull because I know that makes you full of sad.
No, actually, that is really relevant. So you were saying it's a fluke is probably a bit unfair. They got the break with the technical regulations. You know, that can happen. You've still got to be within shooting distance of the World Constructors Championship to get a break like that. Somebody is going to get the rub of the green when it comes to any technical decisions. I think the real, if you want to talk about luck, is what was happening with Perez. So generally, if you go, well, we won the World Constructors Championship, so that means we've got the best car, right? We're the best team, we've got the best car. But, Perez took Red Bull out of that Constructors Championship. Obviously, if you had someone just following Verstappen in, Red Bull would have walked the championship as well. So I think that was definitely a consolation prize, that championship, which was talked up into being this great victory, which it is because it's such good progress. But the Constructors' title, let's be honest here, kiddies, come on, be honest. The Constructors' title is not the one that you're aiming for at the start of the season. You don't go into the boardroom at the start of the season and say, guys, you two are quite close. So what we're going to do is completely even pairing. We don't care about the driver's title at all. Like, don't even worry about it. Don't think. All that matters is the Constructors. No team starts the season off like that. Okay, so definitely the Constructors was a consolation prize. The driver's title was there for the taking, and they did fail to take that driver's title. That is just a fact. I'm not trying to put down the way they rate success or say they shouldn't celebrate it, but they did fail to get a driver's title that was potentially there. Sorry, Matt, I know you want to respond, then Scott's coming in with a broader point.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the team, but I would say that every driver's intention at the start of the season is to definitely win that thing. And I think this is where it's important for Norris, if they're going to have a shot at the Drivers' Championship. It's going to be really important for either Norris or Piastri, but I'm still putting my money on Norris here because of the slightly better tire management and slightly more experience to absolutely dominate right out of the gate. He cannot have these, I had a bad start and wound up in 6th position and Piastri's in 2nd and I'm trying to fight my way back up. If that happens, I think the drivers goes away from them very, very rapidly. And related, the other thing we saw from McLaren that I would rate as a real weakness is they did struggle a lot to get both drivers good strategies during the race. And there they also have to have made an improvement. And we won't know till we get to the first race if they have. I know they made changes.
Yeah, that was the point that I was going to make there, is that McLaren were very poor operationally last year. That constructors title, while it was, yes, a consolation for them, they nearly threw that away. I know you just talked about the technical regulation getting lucky with that. Well, Monza was after the technical reg came in. Don't think they benefited from the flexi wing there, and they threw away an easy one too. There was also some poor decisions by Lando from a driver's perspective as well, allowing Ferrari starting on pole position and ended up finishing P5, sorry, with the eventual penalty with Max, and allowing Charles Leclerc to go from 4th to 1st. And McLaren need to tidy that up because, as we were all expecting, I do expect them to be consistently, again, up there every single weekend fighting for race wins. And I do think Norris is going to be, I think he's really going to prove, it's mad to say, but I think a lot of people, Norris got quite a lot of unfair criticism last season. He deserved a lot of it, but he also got above and beyond, in my opinion, considering he started the year with no race wins and he ended up with 4 and he could have had multiple.
No, I'm not. You can't do that because he had chances to win at least 2 races before the start of that season that he didn't take.
I get that. I do get that. But McLaren have very, very rarely been in those positions to do that. And this year, he was in multiple positions to be able to do it. He should have converted more. But I do also put that down to the mentality of McLaren as well. They never truly believed he could win that championship. And that's also on his part, and his camp's part as well. He should have gone in there and stamped his foot down and throw his toys out the pram. You need to back me. Yeah. And that's what needs to happen again this year. But yeah, I think McLaren, they need to use last year, of course, as a massive positive as it is, but they still need to do a lot of tidying up internally to try and win the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors again, with how hopefully we're expecting it's going to be this close.
Now, I don't want to offend Matt, but I looked up these stats before I'm going to talk about. I know it's not part of your method, but okay. So we were talking about, does Norris have to stamp his authority on the team early on in the season?
Yes.
Okay, but what more could he have done last season? So it was fairly even up to Japan, but by the time we get to Miami, Lando Norris is 42 points ahead. 42 points ahead of Piastri at that point, okay? And then we get to Imola, and that extends to nearly 50 points. And so we get to Spain, and the difference is Lando Norris 150 points to Piastri's 87. Okay, that's by round 10. So round 10, substantially into a 24-race season, and he is 150 minus 87, something points ahead, and McLaren didn't 100% back him at that point. What more can you do than be 73 points ahead of your teammate?
I'm happy to come back at that because I think the difference is the context. McLaren showed up with a car they knew wasn't going to be competitive for tactical reasons. And they knew at best they would have an outside shot at the Drivers' Championship, given how Max was driving. This season, Piastri, who's won races, is going to try and win races. And they're likely to have a car from the beginning that's capable of that. So when I say that he has to do well from the off, he has to convincingly be faster than Piastri in the early races in order for the team to say, we have a real shot at the Drivers' Championship. Oscar, you've done a great job. You've made huge improvements, but we cannot afford to do things like let you get ahead in Monza, where you potentially cost Lando a race win on that strategy.
Well, I think that was all the same last season, and they didn't do it. Anyway, we're going to move on soon, but Scott, last word from you.
My last point is just on Lando. He needs to be more of a As I said, needs to throw his toys out the pram. He needs to do what Piastri, no doubt, has done, or Mark Webber has done, whoever it be on his side of the garage, and not only stamp his authority down, but if he's not getting that support when he does have an advantage, if he gets an advantage, he needs to do that, because if it happens again, then he's going to find himself in a situation as he did last year. And it's just, I think it just goes back to the fact, as we've said multiple times, McLaren's focus was always on the constructors. It was never on the drivers. That they hadn't won that for 25 years. That's where the sponsors wanted to be. I think on a sponsorship side thing, it's about the constructors, whereas the drivers, it's more personal. But this year, hopefully, all you can hope for if you're a McLaren fan is that they truly believe, and they've got over that hurdle, and it's full steam ahead for this season.
My goodness, can you just what the sponsors want? Imagine how happy the sponsors would be if all their activations this year, and yes, I've learned what the word activation means, and I'm not going to stop using it.
Fancy over there.
I know. If all McLaren's sponsors activations, because I don't think they have a title sponsor, I don't know if they want one, but all their activations would be with world champion Lando Norris, I think that would hold some commercial value. Well, I was surprised, Matt, that we hadn't done McLaren, but it gets less glamorous as we go to the bottom end of the grid. So we have, apart from the FIA and F1, I'm actually tempted to go to those two first before we go to the likes of Sauber, Visa, Cash App, Haas, Alpine.
As you wish, my friend.
Do it.
I'm down for anything.
All right. FIA or F1, Scott, you choose.
Shall we start at FIA? Or shall we say the absolute shambles of an organisation?
But hang on, this is not our expectations. This is internally what the FIA, which is Mohammed Ben Sulayem, what is their aim? What constitutes success for them?
Their aim? No, it's his aim. Let's be honest here. It is a dictatorship. He has removed any sense of accountability within that organisation. He actually I don't think an individual has riled me up so much before.
Oh, really? And I've not been affected. I've not been bothered.
He doesn't even participate in this sport. This man makes it his lifelong goal. He's such an attention seeker that he wants to be seen at every single race weekend. I'm sorry. The best way to do your job is to not be seen, is to make sure the sport is run correctly. And all you've done is build a massive divide between the drivers and subsequently the fans. And we are heading into this season, and I'm fully expecting there to be a driver strike at some point throughout the season. I think we are so close to it right now. And this man is up for re-election this year, and I don't know who is going to stand against him. And if no one stands against him, then he will be the president again for another 4 years. And I can see at the end of this year, not only there being a driver strike, but maybe even talks of F1/Liberty Media, the owners, the commercial rights holders, and the teams wanting to separate and leave the FIA, because that is how the announcements of everything that is going to be implemented this year is just wrong, just absolutely wrong. And while it provides some drama, no doubt, for Drive to Survive off track, when it comes to racing on track, that's where this man is just getting in the way, and is potentially going to get in the way of what is arguably going to be the closest race, so closest season in F1 history.
Sorry, I was just busy canceling our accreditation email that I was about to send. I think you're wrong. I think if I'm the boardroom of the FIA, there's two things I need. One, I need him to learn how to play nice with other employees, because as you mentioned, it's been a problem. He's fired like 90% of the staff, and there's literally nobody left to do the work there.
He can't be held accountable though anymore. He's removed the person who internally policed and investigated.
And they've changed the rules around it. You are
FIA.
absolutely right. And
It's
this
just-
is the other bigger problem because, as you mentioned, it is an election year. And I think my biggest ask is that there actually is an FIA still associated with F1, and we don't have half the ASNs with Liberty running GP1 on the continent now. I mean, we're looking at the FISA FOCA wars all over again here if he pushes this too far. And he's certainly, I mean, granted, he's now made some statements about including the drivers, but that was after he changed the rules without consulting them. And you can only do that so long to people who have that much money and egos that large before they refuse to take you seriously. And he's dancing. I'm concerned that he's dancing right on the edge in a way that will seriously damage the sport, because we've been through that in the US with IndyCar and kart, and it ruined it for a very long time. And you do not want a split at all. But I know it's being talked about.
Hard disagree.
I know the split is being talked about, and it's not going to be good for the sport.
But the thing is that, look, at the end of the day, the product of F1 is the teams, the drivers, and obviously the racetracks that we go to and stuff. Whereas the FIA, like the way that they're managing and organising these events, it's just heading completely in the wrong direction. And he's focusing. I know it's been spoken to absolute death about language and so forth, but whatever your opinions are on that, that is such a small item of focus. Surely you should be focusing and putting your time and effort into larger elements of the sport, like stewards as an example. Let's improve the on-track action by improving the stewarding. Let's tackle that rather than what the drivers actually say.
The thing is, he's definitely saying we own the sport. So he's literally gone, well, it's our sport, we own it. And you go, that's okay. Technically, they own the rights, I guess, to the name. But I think, Scott, you're right, which is that, I think it was Matt that made that point. Yes, but in reality, the thing that everyone is watching, all of those entities are owned by F1, by Liberty, and the teams will go with Liberty. If there is a split, none of the teams are going to go, okay, well, we're going to race in the FIA series. Good luck with your Formula Lugnuts or whatever it is that you're doing. You go off, Liberty, with all your brilliant relationships with Netflix, commercial right holders, the fact that you are now race promoters as well. No, we're sticking with the FIA because they own F1. That's not going to happen. It will have to briefly be called Formula Race Cars until the FIA collapse, and then there'll be some money and that'll all get sorted out. But yeah, Matt talks about the line that is being danced. It's really, really close, but I think it's getting to the point now where the mission statement from within the FIA is, no, we have to stamp our authority on this. We have to remind everybody that it's our sport, we're in charge, and it's nothing without us, which I think is patently not true. It's a paper tiger at the moment. So, like, you test that power of the FIA, and my feeling from my completely knowledgeable business knowledge of motorsport and broadcasting is that if you really tested that power, it's all with the commercial rights holder, and none of it is with the FIA.
100%. At the end of the day, people watch F1 for Ferrari, for Lewis Hamilton, for Max Verstappen, for Red Bull, Mercedes, these big brands that are synonymous around the world. You can name these brands and some of these drivers to people that don't even follow motorsport or F1, and they'll have heard of them. They'll know them. The FIA? Sorry, what? Who's that? And this has been going on for a while with MBS and the Liberty Media. And it started, one of the first things that he did, which really miffed them off, was him trying to block the Vegas event, wasn't it? The Vegas race. Remember when he tried to stop that from even going ahead because Liberty Media, F1 are the promoter of the actual event. They were putting their own money into actually running it and so forth. And he tried to block it for safety reasons and more.
Yeah, it was definitely antagonistic. And remember as well, the push to make Andretti join at that specific time and approving the bid at that time when the commercial rights holder would not have wanted to let the 11th team join at that lower buy-in, that was also, it seemed very sort of antagonistic as well.
Trying to get one over. And it's the only thing I think I've agreed with anything that he's done since he came into the sport as the president is the allowance of an 11th team. But this is a man who, as I said, is an attention seeker, who is a failed racing driver in himself. And because of that, he just wants to be too involved. And that's the problem. We need someone who's at the head of the FIA who just is not necessarily, who's not even probably got driving experience. Just let it be someone who can just run and appoint the right people, delegate jobs to people. He's too involved and obviously has, not the best outlook.
I don't want it to turn into an ad hominem attack. We don't need to sort of go, and also he cheats on his wife. That's why, no, let's keep it about the way he's organising the FIA. I don't know the state of his marital relationship. But yeah, he certainly didn't look massively impressive when he did that test run in, was it the Renault? Where he booted up into first gear and threw it into the wall. I've done that in the Super Formula in iRacing. But, I don't claim to be a racing driver. Matt, I think the more fun boardroom expectations is probably Liberty Media themselves, who I think have been doing an absolutely cracking job of promoting F1 since they've come in. They've grown the sport. The cow is fat. The cow is ready for milking, if you like.
Yes.
What would their expectations be for this year? Because it's been like almost an unmitigated success, except for the stutter of the Verstappen domination, which very handily and timely, in a timely fashion, got curtailed just in time for last season to be a fantastic, exciting, competitive season.
Yeah, I think the issue, there's a couple of big issues for Liberty. None of them are necessarily so up this season, which makes this kind of problematic for me. A lot more of them revolve around the 26 season. But I think for them, the important thing will be figuring out how to manage this relationship with the FIA, because they will leave if it gets bad enough. And I do believe they will take most, if not all, of the teams with them. And they will have all of the money. But it would be damaging for both parties for that to happen. So I think job one is figuring out how to make the FIA president happy in a way that lets the sport continue to be exciting for everybody to watch.
So they,
you know what I mean?
So they've probably got this this target, which is how do we make Mohammed Ben Sulayem feel important, and that's how you could do it. So there's a proverb. I can't remember where it's from, but I was told this as a kid, and it was a guy in a really thick coat, and the wind bets the sun that he can make the man that he can blow the coat off. So the wind howls and howls and brings in rain and throws, and everything he does makes the man hold the coat even tighter around him, and he won't let it go, and he zips it up even tighter. But then the sun comes out and says, I can do it, and brings warmth, and the man feels happy and secure and takes his coat off. And maybe that's what the Liberty Media... Did I make that story up? Has anyone else not heard that?
No, but I get the gist of it, yeah.
So maybe that's what they need to do. So we're assuming it's a war, but they could turn around and go, okay, well, how do we make it? How do we help him achieve all his aims? And
that's very judo
at the
of
same
you.
time.
Yeah.
Maybe use your enemy's weight against you. I was a yellow belt in judo, 1993. But from the more fun way of thinking of it is, forget the politics for a second. How can they keep making Formula One a great product? And did you notice how stacked towards the end of the season the sprint races were? And apologies, somebody did email or put in the Patreon Discord and said, is this a stealth way to basically do an American thing of making the end of the season more important? So if you start putting sprint races towards the end of the season, and I think now they've established them enough, I'm actually surprised they haven't increased the amount of sprint races by now. I think 9. I would bet heavily on 9 being in place by 2026? No, Matt? Why not? Why not,
Money.
Matt? Money.
It costs the teams too much money and their profitability goes
but
down.
they'll
I
make-
mean, I hate to be boring that way, but I think they feel like they've struck a happy medium
Really?
for the time being. Yeah,
I don't know about
I absolutely.
I think the
do
viewing
on that
figures
regard.
are irresistibly higher for a sprint weekend, and that they're fighting the battle of oversaturation at the moment. I don't know, because I think that if you're going to make more money from a sprint weekend because your viewing figures are higher, that means everyone's got more ad revenue. That means everyone's happier. That means you can generate more money, right? So it's all about ad impressions and ad slots. So if they can make more money, they'll just give the teams a bit more. Oh, sorry, it's going to cost you a bit more. Here's some more money. I think the aim will be to increase it. I honestly think that the main consideration is they don't want to feel like they're spamming. And because old farts like us keep banging on about, well, it's Kyle mostly, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's mostly Kyle. Keep banging on about sprint weekends being bad. I think that's the main resistance factor that they're having to fight.
I mean, I think it's logistics. I think it's not every circuit is going to be great for sprint races, and they very much know that. And I think the teams are pretty vocal about like, oh, well, if you have a sprint race at Monaco, like why?
Yeah.
You know, why? And keeping it a bit of a special thing means they can probably extract more cash from promoters at the tracks where they do have them.
Yeah,
Because not everybody gets a sprint race.
Promoters will want those sprint races. I'd imagine they're queuing up for them. Scott?
I agree that I think they'll increase because at the moment we've in effect got 3 in the first half of the season and then we've got 3 in the second half of the season, and I think that might increase to 4 on either side. So I think 8's probably a sweet number. That's my maths. There's 24 races at the moment. It's not quite.
So
a
8 will be a
quarter.
third. 8 would be a
Yeah,
third.
a third. Sorry, a third. Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so a third of the calendar will be sprint races, which I think most people could probably accept. What will be interesting, though, is that the Concord agreements, so that's agreement between F1, the FIA, and the teams is up for renewal at the end of the year. So I wonder if there'll be stipulations in there for sprint races and the like. And I mean, it's definitely something, if you're wanting to keep an eye of things off track, as there's plenty already, but everything that kind of happens off track is maybe going to lead to that Concord agreement at the end of the year, and something that's quite, I don't know, but people don't really spend too much time looking into. It'd be quite interesting.
Matt does.
Shall we say in the off season?
I'm happy to tell you I found exactly one copy of one Concord agreement online since I've been looking for it, and that goes back to the 2010s. It's they keep it secret for a reason, is my general guess.
Well, if
Okay.
someone's not happy, you can be guaranteed it will get leaked somewhere.
I am going to read out the 2025 F1 sprint calendar since we've been talking about it before. But before I do, how have we softened to the? I'm glad Kyle isn't on. But like we were all like fully anti. This is ridiculous. It's a cash grab. It's just throwing in races for the sake of it. And obviously, I've been now to a sprint weekend in person, and I thought it was brilliant. I was like, oh great, there's an extra race. Thank goodness for that. And it's sort of made up for. I think some tracks there's not a good support calendar. Support lineup. But I've been to, I don't know, Silverstone. The only full weekend I've done at Silverstone was like 2013, but it was great. You had the Porsche Super Cup there. You had a full lineup of F2, F3. And then when I went in 2018 on Friday, you had I think it was still W Series there at the time.
It was back then.
So like I feel like a great support lineup, like a good undercard on the big fight night, it could also take that same place that sprints are doing at the moment. And I understand there's logistics of getting series out there, but I feel like they could have so many more, personalities and interests in leagues if they funded and supported, right. It doesn't have to be Formula cars, but let's get something like Aussie supercars with jumps and stuff going on. I don't know. They could recreate that entertainment without diluting the F1. Scott.
To answer your first question, have I softened? I have.
Yeah, me too.
Which is-
Sucks, doesn't it? I'm so sorry,
Look,
everyone.
I won't lie to you. I do F1 watch-alongs, and they're great for my YouTube channel, for viewership and stuff.
Scott, we do a sprint review, and that doesn't not make money. If you tune into our sprint review, we get ad revenue on it.
So from that perspective, that's a reason why I've softened. However, I do think one of my bugbears was the fact of they never quite had the format correct for it. The position of it in the weekends, the fact of it you couldn't change setups and so forth. And it was always kind of, on one hand, I'm kind of like, unpredictability sometimes is a good thing, but then I'm also like, but I also want to see the good cars and the good drivers fight against each other. And I think that practice and that setup time should be rewarded. And I think the biggest reason for sprints being much better improved for me is that while they only have an hour to dial in that setup for the sprint race weekend, it doesn't properly ruin the actual race, the qualifying race on Sunday, because they're now able to change their setups. And we've seen throughout the sprint race weekends last year where the eventual race winner and the lineup for the race on Sunday or the qualifying was completely different to what we saw in the sprint, whereas previously it was a preview to the first stint of the race on the weekend on Sunday. And now that's not the case. There's still that, the order can change because the teams have learned and they're able to change
or panic. So
or vice versa. So it's, and that's really a big, I think, factor into why the sprint weekends for me have improved.
I mean, twice we saw Red Bull go, we're not fast enough in qualifying and kill their race pace. I think Austria was one. And I can't remember the other one. But that has led to a good dynamic. And so, look, Scott, we shouldn't have revealed that we sort of make ad revenue from the extra sprint rate, because now everything we say is tainted. So we just come across as shills. Which, to be fair, I've never I've never denied, Matt.
Well, you got me going thinking about the ideas, but also I've been hanging on to this bitterly deep in my heart. You mentioned the American propensity to wait the end of the season and make it more important. But I just felt compelled to point out this vile calumny that I believe it was Bernie who decided to double the points at Abu Dhabi to make the end of the season exciting. So I just want to say it's not just a US thing.
2014,
I just had to get that off my chest.
2014, yes. So if you don't know, in 2014, they decided that the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix would be worth double points. Now, they did say that at the beginning of the season, but it just so happened that how it worked out was if they hadn't had the double points, Lewis Hamilton would have won in the penultimate race, which I think was Interlagos. So Hamilton would have been crowned champion and it would have been over. As it happened, because Abu Dhabi was worth 50 points, suddenly Rosberg was back in it. Now, there was two gearboxes that obviously went in Mercedes cars in that final race. One of them failed. So Rosberg's gearbox failed and made the whole double points thing irrelevant. However, if it had just been the other way around and it's a coin flip, then Hamilton would have had a dodgy gearbox and Rosberg would have been 2014 champion on double points. And that would have been outrageous. But yeah, it is, it's an American thing. Americans love playoffs. I mean, we've been really getting into, NASCAR, but I was a little stunned at how little the regular season counted. And it was all about this playoff run. And I think the guy who won in the end, Logano, came 12th in the regular season, 12th. Who finished 12th in F1? That would have been like Ocon winning the championship.
He's won races before, so it wouldn't surprise me.
It wouldn't surprise you, would it?
A race.
It's a good race, Scott. Don't take it away from him.
Against Sebastian Vettel in an equal car.
He had to hold there. He said plural, and I just wanted to correct him.
He had to fend off.
He's won plenty of races. He's won one F1 race, though.
He had to fend off an aging Vettel at what race? Was it Hungaroring?
Yeah, with in an Aston that was overfueled behind him.
Yeah, in an Aston that was barely beating Lance Stroll in. Yeah, okay. But yeah, still, great win though, Matt. No, it's really good. I don't want to take anything away from you there. But yeah, we've softened to the sprint races. So,
but I did have one more point for
go for it, and then I'll do the sprint lineup.
And this is in the 26 thing. There's two things to worry about. One is the cars, the engine regulations, whether or not they work, because obviously F1 and Liberty had a lot to do with this regulation set. So that's going to be a concern. And I like Scott flagging up the Concord Agreement. I think that's a major one. They're going to have to land that plane. But as an American viewer of the sport, news that ESPN is walking away and there's going to be a bidding war for the rights makes me just feel like I have to say, okay, fine, but do not pry F1 TV out of my cold fingers. That's all I'm going to say.
Right. So the sprint lineup then. So some interesting ones here. So the main, I think, concern we always have is like, don't do it at Monaco. So this season they've got it at China, which to me, that's fantastic. That's race 2, I think. I think that's race 2.
Is it?
Yeah, and obviously like the Chinese Grand Prix track is fantastic. And I think, yeah, with that variability, they've got the format right now. You're going to get 2 distinct races and approaches there. So that's an opportunity for greatness. Miami, I know we enjoyed it because we were there, Matt, but like from a TV point of view, I have rewatched them back and they weren't. I think the only reason it was so interesting to people was because Norris picked up that win and it sort of marked this change of, it might not be Verstappen running away with it. But it was quite lucky. It was quite a lucky safety car that helped Norris out there as well. And as a bit of an insult to injury here, we got told Spa's basically being rotated out of the regular calendar and then it's a sprint weekend. So it's so valued that you would put a sprint weekend there, but not valuable enough to stay on the regular calendar.
Yeah, I think that's more got to do with Spa and government and just how much it costs.
Then why is there a sprint weekend there, Matt?
I think it's a great race to go to, but it's also a challenging race to go to. Like if I go to Singapore, I can stay like in Singapore, and that's like cool. But if I go to Spa, I'm
you've got to stay in a windmill
pit for a weekend.
Yeah, you've got to stay in a windmill. They only speak Flemish. They will not.
But I will
English
agree with you. I think Spa is maybe the best racing circuit in this generation of cars that we have. They can race the most. You can make different setup choices and be equally competitive. Twisty bits are fast on the straights.
Scott,
I love it.
Sorry, I know Scott's English, I'm English. I apologise for Matt's behaviour in not acknowledging Silverstone as the best overall track. But Spa is up there for sure. And great chocolate as well, Belgium. That's not just a stereotype. Fantastic chocolate in Belgium. And then that's July. So the Spa race is July 25th. Massive gap then until October. And you've got a sprint race in Austin in Circuit of the Americas. Absolutely no argument there. That's a great place. I think you have to have a great track and you have to have a great crowd, I think, as well, to make that work. So Miami works on the crowd. Like the in-stadium atmosphere is great. And like looking online, I thought, there's loads of seats free. No one's going to turn up to it. But Sunday was absolutely packed. So COTA has both of those things. Great track, well attended. Brazil, absolutely no question. Fantastic track. And they, by law, it has to rain 1 out of 3 Grand Prix at Interlagos as well. So that's brilliant. But then Qatar? Not sure about Qatar for a sprint race. That might be the weakest sprint race on that calendar.
Yeah, I agree. I think
some things you do for love, some things you do for money.
Yeah, that is true.
Okay, yeah, good. So that is weighted though quite heavily towards the end of the season. So yeah, whoever it was, sorry, I can't remember right now, who said that this is an Americanization. If they start increasing the sprint race points, then we know it's a bit of an America thing. But there's been a lot of wins from F1 over the course of the last few seasons. I think one of the biggest ones for me was the Monaco coverage. So I don't know if you guys noticed this, but this was the second year in 2024 that they took over from the local broadcaster. And my goodness, did they brought Monaco to life in a way that it's never looked in the broadcast. Now, Now, in this case, Scott, there is no financial incentive for me to say that Monaco looks slightly better on TV. But my main complaint was it always looks terrible on TV. Yes, the racing is awful, but they did make it look spectacular, much more spectacular. Watching them go like from turn 1 all the way up to Casino Square, all the way up that hill, and it really brought the venue to life.
Yeah, it was one of the better direct TV directions that we had last year. I wouldn't say the TV direction is great at every single racetrack. I think that's something that they need to improve on. A lot of the times we still miss a lot of overtakes, and sometimes don't even see any of them. Actually, you have to go back to kind of YouTube on board compilations that people put together from F1 TV to actually see some overtakes. But yes, obviously with Monaco being so difficult to overtake, the famous Lance Stroll, that there was one overtake that happened, and then the transition to Lance Stroll clipping the barrier or something, whatever he was doing, or coming out the pit lane, because that was so...
No, it was through swimming pool, so...
rather than someone rejoining out of the pits and there actually being some side-by-side action heading up to Casino Square and stuff. But yeah, no, we actually saw some overtakes that did happen at Monaco last year. Did we get any? Yeah, we did actually get some last year at the tail end. But it's better, but the team of direction still needs to improve overall, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I look, I think they have won on the broadcast, and I think this is something I want to do. People keep asking for it, is doing watch-alongs to historic races. And in fact, Scott, you're the perfect person to do that. You, me, Catman, and Trumpets, and we'll watch something from like the mid-90s. And there are great races to watch in the 90s, and it's still characters and drivers I remember. But when you look at the broadcast, it will make you appreciate what we have now, Matt. It really does make you kind of go, oh my God, like they only care about the top six. Like, okay,
the 99 European race, is that the one I'm remembering that was just insane?
Yeah. But like,
and yet you listen, I remember watching it, and you're right. The commentary is like, well,
well, no, you had like James Hunt, and you get a guy that he didn't like, and you go, well, this guy's useless. Like, he is an embarrassment to Grand Prix racing. But you'd never really know. Like, you wouldn't know Zhou Guanyu. That would never have come up in like 90s broadcasts. Whereas now, because he's a driver and there's activations, he has to be a superstar. You have to know what his favorite crisps are.
I think I don't really get to watch TV direction too much now, see watch-alongs and stuff. But one thing I really appreciate is a track map. And I was recently watching the Daytona 24 Hours, and you've got 50 cars on track at the same time. And the one thing they didn't have, which I thought was essential, which F1 doesn't have, their broadcast doesn't have it on all the time, but it's on a lot more often now, is having a track map on screen, so you know where drivers are. It's more so they show it when they're coming up to the pit windows, so that the viewer gets an idea of who the other driver's racing and where they need to come out in front of. So you know, rather than just on the timing screen, where exactly, let's say Max Verstappen is out on track when Lando Norris is coming into the pits because of the overcut that they always tended to do, and that's really insightful. And then I watched, and I really missed it when we had the Daytona 24 Hours. And for 24 hours, I had no idea where anyone was on track. It was just an absolute mess, and something that I thought is so essential to motorsport now, or my viewing pleasure and experience anyway, when watching F1 and any type of motorsport, especially when I'm doing the watch-alongs, because you get a whole overview of wherever
actually seeing the sport. I think you can get a track mapper, can't you, from the F1 live timing?
Yeah, that's what I use, and it's so essential because you get a whole story, and you get to see when other drivers are going close down the back of the field. It's not just about who wins.
Well, obviously we never had access to any of that. The very most you could hope for was really a ticker, and they would tend to sometimes they'd scroll between P1, P2, and they'd show the gap, then P2, P3, and every now and then you might get a P1 to P6 because that was the points, or if there was a championship connotation between P1 and P7. But most of the time you only got like one gap at a time. So even having the timing tower itself is a massive, massive privilege. I heard a thing of Jimmy Carr, the British comedian, was on some podcast, and he said, remember 70 years ago people didn't even have hot showers. And you go, oh yeah, like just the simple act of walking into a hot shower is so like privileged. And like I feel like in F1 the timing tower in that corner in the left hand side, that is our hot shower that we don't even appreciate. So yes, you can build up from a picture from the track map, but for me it's a combination of watching the lap times during the race and that timing tower. So the timing tower is my track map, because I can see, well, okay, I don't need to see which particular corner people are in. But if I know that there's a gap of 15 seconds to first place, he's kind of out of it. Oh, but hang on a minute. That new tyre that they went on is chewing up 0.8 seconds lap. Is this actually on? How is this going? And you can watch the battle. So a race that I've cited often in 2024 is Barcelona, where Lando Norris was catching Verstappen. And if you were watching the lap times, I don't think Verstappen was pictured on TV a lot during that race. But if you were watching the live timings, you could see that was one of Verstappen's greatest races from the season, because he was really managing that gap all the way down and making sure he had tyres all the way to the end. And I think seeing those live timings and just trying to understand how the lap times change during a stint, to me, that's one of the biggest tools. We never had any idea of what was going on with the tyres in the 90s, if someone had burned through their tyres or not. And then we got into the refueling era, where you didn't even know how heavy a car was. And you go, that car's going oh, no, he's had to pit. So you go, yeah, I think we should do it. We should do it, that kind of watch along, Scott, just so that we can feel lucky about what kind of broadcast we have now.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. And I do remember going round my grandparents' house. My granddad was the proper racing fan who got me into it, and watching the 90s broadcast as a kid and just hearing Murray Walker and seeing, that just how bland it was. Obviously, it's classic to look back at, but you do look at it. We don't realise what we've got in the moment, do we? It's really, it properly is first world problems.
Yeah. Also, Murray Walker is definitely a legend and transformed motorsport commentary. So now, if you're not a Murray Walker screamer, and there he goes, you won't get a commentary job anywhere if you're not basically doing what Murray Walker does. However, the amount of times you go, and there goes Zonta, and Brundle, who saved F1 for me, would be like, no, that's the safety car, Murray. Joey, like, he would correct him so often, but it didn't matter, because what Murray Walker was doing, he was bringing you a flavour and an excitement of the Grand Prix, and he was the first fan watching it with you. But that has now been replaced with, David Croft, for example, who has his detractors, but broadly knows what's going on during a Grand Prix.
Yeah, all you have to do is just look at, they've got on Sky Sports a tour of the commentary studio, how much wealth of information they now have available to them to be out. They still primarily are commentating on what's broadcasted, but they have a lot more available to them. And then that's where, apologies, I'm forgetting who they are, but Martin Brundle and all the co-commentators, that's where they come in and they give the insightful analysis of pit stops and strategy and so forth to allow Crofty and whoever it may be.
So much information now as well.
To commentate on the images that are in front of you. But overall it has got better, but there's still improvement.
But when we talk about, like, Matt, what the board would be saying when it comes to the broadcast of Liberty Media, like the broadcast, we're tinkering at the edges. There's not like massive low hanging fruit.
You'd think that, and I would tend to agree. I think broadly they do a good job. Obviously, with my weird nature, I'd like better tire information more often, things like that. But fundamentally, what they're looking for in terms of the graphical presentation is what information, if I just cut this race on at the second, what can I see immediately that tells me exactly what's happening with this race? And if I look at it and I can't figure out straight away what piece of information is missing from this puzzle that viewers really ought to have. And that's been at the heart of a lot of the improvements the broadcast has made. Like you say, the timing tower, like you say, putting the track map up, notating how many pit stops have been made, things like what's the pit window here, who's at risk, who might come out ahead of or just behind someone and have to fight for that position and ruin their tires for their second stint. Things like that. It's not easy to solve, because the more things you put on screen, the less cars you see.
Yeah, and so when they tried doing the picture in picture, like, that's I think that's been a success. So,
Yeah.
but it's like if you're watching on a laptop screen, or sometimes, like, God forbid, you have to watch on your phone, and you go, oh, why isn't that picture-in-picture bigger? But yeah, you have to aim on people broadly watching it on like a 39 to 50-inch TV, and you go, okay, actually, the picture in the tower, it kind of works for tracking the action, and there's lots of options where you can just follow the driver you want. But when they did the replays of the start, which I think was really well intentioned, and I think that was a Rob Smedley innovation, from a time when nothing was happening at the beginning of races, so they went, oh, we've got to do something. But then now we're in an era where loads of stuff is happening, and we have all the live timings, we have all the data to pick apart what is actually happening in that first 4 laps. And then they show these replays over and over again. You go, no, we're informed now. We know that the beginning of the race isn't boring.
I will just say about the broadcast, though, is that I do appreciate that they're willing to try new things.
Yeah.
They've tried the drone thing. They've tried different graphics. They're always looking to improve the broadcast and the viewing experience. And some things work and some things don't. And what's important is that it seems like they're listening. They're listening to viewer feedback. And there's been like the drone thing. People said how kind of disorientating it was. And we haven't really seen it since, because they're like, okay, we're going to go away and we're going to get it properly done right until it's in a position to try again. And graphics and the picture in picture, that's something that people have been calling out for ages, and they've done it. And that's the good thing, is that the broadcast experience does seem, or the viewing experience of the broadcast just seems to be getting better and better. And yeah, if something works, brilliant. If it doesn't, then they don't just let it fester for a season and get on everyone's nerves. They pretty quickly remove it and then go back to what does.
And this is what I really love about it, is in a way, Formula One has co-opted these broadcasts. They've stopped being a thing, and it's always about sort of that iterative improvement. Where can we make a step here? Can we try a thing? Did it work? What does our data tell us? Yes, we'll do it. No. Okay, let's go. Let's try and go about it a different and more creative way. So I'm happy with the broadcast, because I know they will continue to improve it and to continue to experiment to make it better. And that's all you can really ask. But I do have a question for you. There's one team that did very well last season that we've not talked about. And I believe it's probably your favorite French team. Also possibly the only French team. And that would be Alpine. So if you were sitting on the board of Renault, what would you demand from this team to be successful?
I would demand that you sell the team by the end of the year. Because that's, I think, I still think that's the direction the team's going in. Try and get us as many points as possible, constructors wise, so that we can earn more prize money to take away with us and sell on to someone else. I think this is why, and I'm happy. On one hand, I'm sad. On the other, I'm happy that Doohan is most likely, let's be honest, going to be replaced by Colapinto. I'm happy Colapinto, though, is going to be in an F1 seat. I'm just not happy it's going to be at the expense of another rookie, because I think fresh faces on the grid. Yes, we've got a number of them for this year, but I didn't want Colapinto to be brought in replacement of that. But Colapinto, while I'm happy he's going to be on the grid, I think he's been brought in purely for business reasons, not because of driving related reasons. And that's nothing against him. I think it's purely because it looks more preferable to an investor, to a buyer, that you've got Pierre Gasly and Colapinto as your driver lineup than it does Gasly and Doohan. Because Colapinto is bringing a shed load of cash with him. He's more commercially viable. He's going to replace that market absence of Sergio Perez in South America and across the world. Because he's very popular and he's a good character. And I think that's the direction that Alpine are heading in. But I am also very intrigued to see how they get on with Mercedes engines as well. Because Renault haven't had good engines for quite some time. They just seem to always go pop, don't they?
Well, it's amazing what happens when you
Mercedes don't.
It's amazing what happens when you stop funding your engines and then blame them for all your failures. And I honestly think, given the whole history of Renault, it's a real travesty.
Oh my God.
The opinion that most people have about their power units, but you're not wrong. They've made some terrible choices, and those terrible choices have negatively affected the team. I don't know. For me, if I'm the board, whether I want to sell or not, I want to sell at the highest possible price. And if I don't finish at least 6, like I did last season, I'm going to have to count that as a fail. I'm sorry. And the other thing I'm going to absolutely demand is that Gasly get a podium like he did last season. I know we're not going to have a 2-3 in Brazil like we did, but nevertheless, Gasly getting a podium, I think those are minimum asks to demonstrate Alpine is a viable race team that somebody who wants on the Formula One grid for less than the $750 million to $1 billion they're going to ask for a brand new team going forward in the Concord Agreement. Then I think you're going to have to put that up there, or else I'm going to be like, well, I'm buying damaged goods. I think you should give me a discount.
I don't think Brazil counts in a way. So like, yes, yeah, obviously it's great to be up on the podium, but in a race, you don't want like the Panis, points in Monaco 1996 or whatever it was when only 5 cars ended up finishing. You want like a genuine result that anyone who can cut through the data would see through.
It was genuine. It was the strategy they ran, got to the front of the race.
And if it was dry, they'd have got that result. Okay, come on.
No, but when the opportunity presented itself, they took full advantage of it. And not just because their drivers were good, because they were, but because strategically they recognized the opportunity to stay out and get to the front when everybody else pitted, and their drivers were good enough to bring that strategy home. And, frankly, if the rain hadn't slowed down, that could have been another win for the team.
They're going to be aiming for 5th, really. Their aim should be to finish ahead of Aston Martin, who I think many suspect aren't going to put too much stock into this season. They're going to put, like many teams are, into 26. Whereas I think Alpine are going to put a lot of stock into this season because, well, they seem to find some performance at the end of last year. Gasly found some confidence in the car. Ocon was putting in some good drives as well. And with the introduction of Colapinto, like that's I just think you don't bring in Flavio Briatore, a shrewd businessman, to kind of drive this team forward. No, he's there to strip the team of its assets and find a buyer and put it in a position to look lucrative and viable to investors. And what better way to do that than have a very good 2025 heading into a complete unknown, a new regulation set in 2026 where they could be at the easily bottom of the grid again.
But see, this is the thing. They've still got the Renault power unit for one more season. That's why I think 5th is completely... I mean, 5th would be the ultimate fluke. I don't know how they would pull that off with a rookie in Gasly, if I'm being honest. 6th
I thought you called Gasly a rookie then. I was like, how dare you?
No, Gasly and a rookie. Right? Because they don't have the power unit that's really competitive with the top teams, or with Aston for that matter. So I think 6 is a really tall ask, and it would demonstrate that despite having not the best power unit, they still have a really good race team and a really good design team. And that's what you need to show investors who might be willing to spend money on you in this day and age. I will also say I think Doohan's getting a raw deal out of this, and I'm kind of sad.
Yeah, I liked your Viri point. You know that meme where there's a guy on a motorcycle and he on a push bike, and he pushes a stick through his wheels and falls off. And
yes, I know that one.
Yeah, so Renault do that, and they're like, "Why would Viri do this?"
Exactly, right?
Oh, yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible what's happening there, and they've clearly made the economic decision to cut ties there. So which engine are they running?
They're running the Renault. I think they switched to Mercedes in 2026.
Okay.
I thought
But you know what? The good news is, if I'm wrong, I think our audience will tell us.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Based on your statistical analysis from McLaren, they are very willing to correct us. And we don't mind that at all. There's several ways to get in touch with us. We all have our social media links in the show notes below, so you can go and click that on your platform of choice. You can email us feedback@missedapex.net, or you can do matt@missedapex.net or spanners@missedapex.net as well. We would love it if you consider supporting us on Patreon. So patreon.com/missedapex, $5 a month to say, yeah, I would like to support an independent podcast. I do think we are the most downloaded F1 podcast that doesn't have a production house behind us. And the reason we can do that and dedicate the time to that is because of our patrons. So patreon.com/missedapex. You will get an ad-free feed. Join us in the Discord. But mostly, hopefully, it's the warm, fuzzy feeling that you are putting an independent content creator in the field in and amongst, because we are mixing it with the likes of, the race, Stack, motorsport.com. We're in and amongst that crew when it comes to F1 podcasting, because you guys vote with your wallets to say, we want you guys to do this as a job. And so we're very grateful for that. Patreon.com/missedapex. Scott, what is the schedule coming up? So you surprised me by saying you might be doing F1 testing watch-alongs, and it's in 2 weeks' time.
Yes, so on the 26th to the 28th, so over 3 days, we have 3 days of testing at Bahrain, as we do, have done for a good few years now, because Bahrain paid a considerable amount of money for that option,
It's
as well
a
as the
good
first race
track.
of the year, as everything does in
I'd be
F1.
upset if it was Monaco had paid to do the testing. But
It's also,
there are worse tracks. There are.
doesn't
Bahrain's fine.
snow a lot in Bahrain, and it does occasionally in Barcelona.
Yeah, so they used to
better.
struggle with really cold weather at Barcelona testing. So in a lot of ways, Bahrain does make sense, and it's a decent track.
Yeah, so there are morning and afternoon sessions. Of course, before that, though, on the Tuesday, we have the F1 75 reveal event.
Oh, that's the Tuesday. Right.
That's the Tuesday evening.
Yeah.
Yes, on the 18th, I believe. And then we have various teams doing their own shakedowns, similar to what McLaren and Williams have done, doing their own YouTube announcements and stuff that you can keep an eye out on their own channels. But yes, the big one is testing.
Okay, and you're going to do a live watch along for that. What's your YouTube channel?
Yes, I'm going to be doing some watch alongs for that, because I know how it can get quite boring. So why not come and join me, chat a lot of waffle.
It's televised though, right? The
testing? Testing is televised, yes. Yeah. So it's a combination. You can find it on Sky and also F1 TV. I think they do a combined commentary package, so they all kind of like get in the booth together.
If you want people to watch your watch along, you should invite a handsome middle-aged F1 podcaster and his elderly friend.
Yes,
exactly.
Invitation out to you guys.
Excellent.
So yes,
we'll join you for that.
In true style, yep, it'll be myself. Hopefully it all works as well. I've never done testing before, so hopefully I can do everything the way that I want to. And if so, you can find me out, find my watch-alongs on Stuffey, link in the description below on my YouTube channel, and I'll be inviting some of the Missed Apex crew on there as well.
And in any case, go and follow Scott. So if you do want an alternate, he does the best watch-alongs, and they're very well attended. They have a great live chat in there. It's a really cool place to hang out during the race if you're not in our Patreon Discord, which is of course slightly better. But go and subscribe to Scott. He also does brilliant TikTok videos where he's like, oh no, there was another crash that somehow wasn't my fault. It weren't my fault, it was the other person's. Heavily edited to show that he always he edits out the bits where he just doesn't brake and slams into the back.
First rule being a racing driver, even if it's virtually, it's
never your fault. Go and follow Matt. He has a wife. You know.
I do. Remarkably, people who meet me are always like, really? You, a wife? How?
Do you know what his wife's name was? In content, no. His wife's name is Amanda Weaver, and that was a Monty Python reference. And she writes great F1 books. The one that is out at the moment is, I always get it wrong, Matt, so just say what it was. The Fast and the Reckless.
Kiss and Collide is the new one. The old one, I'd actually have to go something reckless, something.
Yeah, the Fast and the Reckless.
Something like that. I I don't know. I could go ask her. I think she just
Everyone in our Patreon Discord who has bought it has enjoyed it. It's a romantic novel around Formula One, and you can follow me as well. I'm still having a good time on X. Sorry, they're still getting a lot of interactions on there. Our little community is still good on there, but we're also on Blue Sky. I'm just double posting to all of that. I posted on LinkedIn for the first time in a couple of years. There's some photos going up on Instagram. Just search for Richard Reddy or Spanners Ready on those things. Until next time, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast. Missed Apex is filmed in front of a live studio audience. Any resemblance to facts are purely coincidental.